Get it poppin'. Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're just going to wait a couple more minutes for folks to come on in. Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone, again. Welcome to Technology Tuesdays for a tour of your PC. My name is Lydia Nimke, and I do adult programming for the library. With us today, we also have Beth Gabriel in the background.
Hello, everybody. Welcome.
And she'll be there keeping track of all of your questions and kind of monitoring the chat. So if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them. She is actively watching out for those. I hope that at the end of our time today, you'll leave knowing a lot more about your personal computer. And I will let everyone know at the top that within the next 2 days, I will send out a recording of today's presentation as well as a handout full of all the information we go over today. So no need to take extensive notes on the slides or anything like that. And just a little bit more housekeeping. You're all muted and have your cameras turned off by default. But as I mentioned, feel free to submit any questions through that questions box and feel free to engage in the chat. So the core concepts we're going to be covering today are the parts of your computer, buttons and ports on your computer, peripherals and accessories. We'll go over some basic troubleshooting steps. And at the end, after we have a basic understanding of the parts of a PC, we are going to talk about describing problems to get help with any computer issues you may run into. I would say that this is going to be like a major takeaway from today. And we're also going to be specifically talking about a desktop computer, so keep that in mind. There's another tour of the laptop computer scheduled for March 16th if you have any interest in that. We also won't be talking too much about actually using the computer because, there's so many ways you can use a computer. It all depends on what you're trying to use it for. But if you have any interest in learning more about that, you can certainly let me know in the chat, and maybe we could have a Tech Tuesdays about that specifically or kind of integrate it into the laptop presentation. So feel free to let me know. I'm always looking for feedback. So let's jump right in about the parts of the computer. Each part of the computer has its own purpose, and it works in conjunction with the other parts to make your machine run. If one piece is out of whack, chances are you'll experience significant problems with your entire device. So at the center in the main part of the computer is your motherboard, which connects all the other parts and allows them to send and receive information. There is also the central processing unit, which you may commonly see referred to as the CPU. It does all the thinking and allows the programs and applications to run. There's also the CPU fan, which keeps the inside of the computer cool so it doesn't overheat. So whenever you hear your computer like making a roaring noise, that's generally the fan trying to compensate for some stress on your machine by cooling it down. There is also random access memory, which you will commonly see referred to as RAM, which keeps things handy for your CPU to access and then deletes it when it's not needed anymore. I like to think of the RAM as the short-term memory of the computer, whereas the hard drive, which stores all of your saved files in your operating system and programs and applications, is more like the long-term memory. You also may have an optical drive on your computer, which is also called a disk drive, which allows your computer to take in and receive information like movies and music from disks. Not every computer has an optical drive, and they're actually kind of disappearing. More recent computers don't have them, but you may or may not have them depending on, what you've purchased. Not a lot of information is stored solely on a disk anymore, so that's why they're kind of being phased out. And you will also have a power supply unit, or a PSU, which feeds all of the other computer parts with electricity. And then you're also going to have a graphics processing unit, which displays everything on your screen. Finally, computers also have a case that encompasses all of these components that I've listed on these 2 slides, and they can encompass a lot more. I've got a picture of that coming up for you, and that's it. You have your computer. Now I'm going to make an important kind of distinction here, I guess you could say. A personal computer doesn't have a whole lot of function without a monitor, but the computer is not the monitor. So whatever you're looking at, if you're on a desktop computer right now, is separate from the thing that's actually allowing you to connect to the internet and allowing you to be able to join in on this webinar today. So here you are. Here's a computer tower. It looks your computers are going to look more or less like this one you see here, unless it is an all-in-one, in which case, the computer itself, something like what you'd see right here, is actually integrated into the back of the monitor. Now let's talk about some of the buttons and ports for connecting peripherals. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and jump over to a place where I can show you all the buttons and ports that you may have on your computer. All right. So this is another example of a, very general, very basic computer tower. Right now I'm in the gfcglobal.org website, which is really great because it has all these interactive lessons and tutorials about using your computer, using other technology. So I highly recommend checking that out if you're interested in learning more. And Beth has actually just dropped the link to this specific course called Computer Basics into the chat. So I'd encourage you to check that out when you get the chance. But it will, of course, be included in your handout, so no worries. Up at the top here, we have that optical disk drive. It can be called a CD-ROM or a DVD-ROM drive, and it lets your computer read those discs, CDs, and DVDs, software, things like that. Your optical drive can be a read optical drive or a read-write optical drive. So reading gives it the ability to see what's on your disk and play it for you, whereas writing is the ability to put things on a disk. So like burning CDs and burning DVDs, things like that. And that is indicated by an R on the front of that optical disk drive or an RW for read-write. Moving on down the computer, we also have the power button. And this is used to power your computer on or off. And that's, going to have your general power button symbol on it, that circle with the line going through it. It can be located a whole variety of places, but it's always going to have that symbol on it for the most part. Next up, on the front of computers, there tends to be an audio in and an audio out. So your audio in is your microphone, anything you're sending into the computer. Your audio out is going to be your speakers, your headphones, your earbuds, things of that nature. There's usually going to be places to plug those in on the front of your computer. And then there's usually going to be a couple of USB ports as well. USB ports are a pretty standard port for plugging in flash drives, chargers, a whole wide variety of things. And we'll get into that more as we go on. So moving on to the back of the computer. Up at the top here, you're going to see your power socket. This is where you're going to plug in your power cord that connects your computer to electricity. That power socket feeds directly into your PSU, your power supply unit, which feeds your electricity through your computer. Moving down, we have another set of audio in and audio out. So most computers have it so that you can connect 2 or more audio devices for audio in or audio out. So you have the 2 on the front and usually at least 2 on the back. Here we have your Ethernet port. It kind of looks like an elongated telephone port for a telephone jack. And that is where you'll connect your Ethernet cord for a wired internet connection. So you'll connect that to your modem or your router, and then you'll have your wired internet. And then you'll see here, we also have 6, it looks like 5 or 6 USB ports. So that's additional USB ports to the 2 in the front. In general, I like to put my things that stay with my computer, things I never take away from my computer, in the back USB ports, so I can free up the ones in the front for things I'm always moving around, like flash drives, charger cables, things like that. But in the back, I have my keyboard, my headphone receiver, things like that. You're also going to have a place to connect your computer monitor. So there are a bunch of different ways you can connect monitors to computers. A very popular and common one is an HDMI, and things are tending to move that way to having just HDMI ports. And then going further down, all of these colored ports you see are a little antiquated, maybe. They're only going to be on older machines that you see. If you buy a machine today, you're not going to see these colored ports with these prongs. But if you do, say you buy an older machine, nothing wrong with that. If you buy an older machine, you're going to see these serial ports, which were used to connect things like digital cameras, older digital cameras, printers, things like that. But in general, it's been replaced by the USB ports up above. If you do happen to have one of these and you need to connect something to it, no big. You'll just want to make sure that you're fitting the right end of the plug to the right side. So if you can see here, and I'll try and come in a little bit on it. One has like prongs coming out, and there's another plug that has holes coming in. So you don't want to put your prongs on your prongs or your holes on your holes. You want to make sure the right side of the plug is going into the right side of the port. And then down below, and again, you might not see this on a more modern computer, we have a mouse port and a keyboard port. So these are called PS2 ports, and the green port is typically for your mouse, and that would be color coded on the end of your mouse's cord, you would see that plug to go into this port. That's the same color. So you can just kind of match green with green, purple with purple for your keyboard. Keep it moving, very simple. Down below, we have some expansion slots, and these are just for if you wanted to add any, a new graphics card, things like that to your computer. There's room for you to add additional things there. And then another port that you won't see very often anymore is a parallel port. And again, it's mostly been replaced by USB. So, are there any questions on buttons and ports before we move back into the presentation?
So far, I don't see any, but make sure to plop any of those into the question and answer box or the chat while I'm going through, and I'm happy to read them out loud.
Absolutely. Awesome. All right, so let's jump back into our presentation here to talk about peripherals and accessories. So peripherals are going to extend the function of your computer, and they can receive and transmit information to that computer. Some examples of peripherals are your monitor, your keyboard, your mouse, your printer, your microphone, your speakers, your webcam, your headset, your scanner, and more. So the key here is really that they do something. They allow your computer to do something that it couldn't do by itself. So when your computer is just its tower, you add a monitor. Now there's a visual aspect to your computer. You add speakers, now you can hear things from your computer. You add a microphone, and now you can say things to your computer. So it's adding another functionality. Now I'm going to actually stop sharing my screen so I can show you just the examples I have behind me. There we go. So I'm using my monitor, obviously, but behind me you can see my husband's monitors. Monitors are pretty much just like little TVs at this point. They have, 1080p, 4K resolution, 3D monitors, just the same as with your TVs. Let's see. Keyboard. Your keyboard can be wired or unwired. Here's my mouse. Again, it can be wired or unwired, and that's definitely another growing trend that you'll see in personal computers is going wireless or going to Bluetooth. Many of my peripherals don't actually have a wire unless they're charging, so that I like that. It's pretty nice. Speaking of, my headphones are charging right now. It's just nice to get rid of the cords, less things to get tripped up on, less visual clutter, I think. So instead of having a plug, they just have a little receiver. If you can see that, that's the one that my mouse is connected to right now. That plugs into a USB port and allows, your peripheral to communicate with your computer. Okay. So here is a larger microphone that I have connected to my computer right now. And I also have an external speaker. In addition to that, I also have my headset that has both headphones and a microphone attached to it, right? So you can see that I have a ton of audio equipment hooked up to my computer right now. I also usually generally have earbuds just to be able to change, the pressure on my ears that these can cause. So utilizing those back ports for my headset that always stays by my computer, utilizing the front ones for the earbuds that I might move, change devices with, is nice. I also have an example of an external webcam to kind of show you all. Most personal computers aren't going to have webcams that come, right in the face of them in the monitor like you will see with a laptop or a tablet. And I don't have a printer or scanner at home to show you all, but if you're curious, you could always stop by the library and check out ours. Scanning is completely free, so if you're looking to start a mini photo digitization project, you can always do that there. Speaking of accessories, your accessories don't necessarily extend function, but nonetheless, they are right alongside your computer. So think of all the non-technology based things that are on your desk right now. Things like your mouse pad, things like computer duster, those sorts of things. Accessories are kind of like accessories on a car or accessories to an outfit. They don't necessarily make or break the car or the outfit, but they are nice to have nonetheless. So here's a couple more examples of accessories. Desk lamp, headphone holder, wrist rest, screen wipes, things like that. Now we're going to move on to talking about basic troubleshooting. And these are some simple steps that you can take when things aren't working as you'd like them to. So what is troubleshooting? Troubleshooting is a form of problem solving in which you make a logical and systematic search for the source of a problem in the hopes of solving it. If you can't solve it, at a minimum, it helps you to identify the symptoms. So for just simple basic troubleshooting that, most everybody who uses a computer on the regular should be able to do, you want to start by just writing down the steps that you're taking. You don't necessarily have to write them down, but remember and take note of them, at least personally. That way you don't repeat the same steps over and over again or, forget what you've done. And you're also going to want to make note of any error messages you get. A lot of times, if you get a long, chain of letters and numbers and an error message, you can Google it and you'll find out what the problem is, if you need to take further action, if your website or application is just down, and that can kind of, give you some answers there. So for your hardware, and now computer hardware includes all of the physical parts of your computer. So the case, the CPU, and your peripherals. So those physical things that you can hold in your hand are your hardware. If something goes wrong here, in general, if you aren't, an IT person type of person, if you haven't built a computer, there isn't a whole lot you can do. There's not a whole lot I can do if something were to break with my computer's hardware. There are two things that I can do, and that is check the cables. A lot of times cables just get loose over time. Maybe you bumped your desk and something jiggled. Check the cables and make sure they're all in tight. Another thing you can do is restart your computer, do a hard restart. You can see if that helps the situation. And those are kind of the only two things non-computer people can really do with hardware issues. So in contrast with hardware, software is the set of instructions that is stored and run by the hardware. So these are your programs, your operating system, and the applications you use on your computer. There are a lot of desktop applications that you may be familiar with, and they fall into a bunch of different categories. Word processors, web browsers, media players, and games are all considered desktop applications. So, if you're having trouble with a desktop application, consider checking for updates. Try to close the software and restart it. Sometimes that'll fix your problem. If that doesn't work, if it's completely frozen and you can't, file and then exit out like you normally would, or you can't push the X, you may have to force quit from the software. And that is done really simply just by pressing Control, Alt, and Delete in that order all at the same time. And then opening up your task manager, selecting the selecting the application that's giving you difficulties and pressing End Task. And then if all else fails, you can restart your computer. One final thing that you can do if you're comfortable doing it, if all of these things fail, is you can try to uninstall and reinstall the application. That can be a little bit more complicated depending on how comfortable you are with, installing and uninstalling things on your computer. But if you do go that route, you just want to make sure that any files that aren't cloud-based are saved if you can, if the application is allowing you to at least do that. Going into troubleshooting internet issues. There are generally two types of issues that are very common that I see at least. If a web page isn't displaying correctly, you're gonna, again, wanna check that your browser is up to date. I know I've said up to date on every, troubleshooting slide for whatever you're trying to troubleshoot, but it's really important to make sure that whatever software you're running is the latest version. If your computer can, of course, handle the latest version, but that's a different subject. You want to make sure it's the latest version because a lot of times problems are discovered with the current version of the software. They come up with an update that fixes that version, or security vulnerabilities are found. And if you're running an old version of the software, you're leaving those vulnerabilities open. You're dealing with the same problems that they fixed maybe 2 or 3 updates before. So you just want to make sure your browser is up to date. You can also try switching to a different browser. I've seen this a lot with learning management systems, especially. Some of them are optimized specifically for, say, Firefox, or they're optimized specifically for Chrome. Some of these different websites are specifically coded and created to be viewed on Google Chrome, say. So if you're viewing them on Internet Explorer, perhaps it's not going to be the same experience. And then you can always try a different link to view the web page. Sometimes, the file paths on the server are out of date. Something has gone wrong with the path to that initial website. So if you can kind of bypass that to get to what you're actually there for, it might work. I'll give you an example. Say you were trying to log into your Yahoo email. So you go to the yahoo.com main homepage, but that page is down. What you could try doing, instead of going to yahoo.com, go directly to the login screen for Yahoo Mail, and that might be working. So you can always try to kind of bypass the issue in that sense. It doesn't work all the time, but sometimes it's definitely worth a shot. The second internet problem you might run into is if there's no internet connection at all. So what you can do to kind of troubleshoot that is test your Wi-Fi on different devices. If the Wi-Fi works fine on your phone or on your tablet, it's a pretty good indicator that you might need to reconnect your computer to the Wi-Fi. If your Wi-Fi doesn't seem to be working on any of your devices, you should look into resetting your modem or router. And this is really simple. You can do it in just a few minutes by disconnecting them from power for a minute or two and then reconnecting them. You might have to log back on with all your devices, maybe, depending on the security settings that you have on your devices and for your internet, but that's a pretty simple process. If you are on Wi-Fi, you can try to switch to a wired connection. So if you're on a wired connection, you are directly connected to your modem or router through that Ethernet port on the back of your computer that we talked about a little earlier. So you can switch to that wired connection, and then if it still doesn't work, or if you don't have an Ethernet cord, something else is going on, after all these other steps have been exhausted, it's probably time to contact your internet service provider. So your Spectrum, your AT&T, Uverse, whatever you've got. It may simply just be an issue with the connection in your area or an outage. They'll be able to give you more guidance there. So moving on to describing problems. No matter how good of a job you do troubleshooting, whatever you're able to do, there are still going to definitely be situations where you can't get your computer to work correctly. And in these cases, there are a variety of individuals and organizations who can help you. Describing your problems well is a really big help to them and helps them help you more efficiently. Yeah. So first step in describing your problems well is, of course, finding someone to describe them to. So you can find a paid professional at the Geek Squad, the Genius Bar, your company's IT department, your internet service provider, other small computer repair or IT businesses, family members, friends, and of course, your friendly neighborhood librarian. I included this step to emphasize that not everyone who is good with technology can help with every problem you have. If you come to my library and your resume's formatting has gotten messed up over the years, or your resume file won't upload to a job application, if you're having more surface level problems, I guess, I'm definitely your girl. I can definitely help you reformat that resume. I can definitely help you, draft up an email, create a new one, all that good stuff. However, if you bring your laptop to my library because the keyboard stopped working and you are trying to replace the keyboard, I don't know how to do that. So not everyone who's good with computers is good with every aspect of them. So the second part of step one is give them information about your computer. It's good to know at a minimum what operating system you're on. But don't worry if you don't know too much more than that. The person helping you will probably ask something along the lines of, what are you running? What operating system you're on? Something of that nature. If they need more information than that, whoever's helping you will help you find it. If anyone is interested in knowing where to locate system information for the Windows OS, I can show you that during Q&A. If you're interested, just let me know. Step two is to communicate to the person assisting you what should be happening or what you want to be happening that isn't happening. And you'll want to read verbatim any error messages that you're getting when you try to accomplish the task. So in this step, saying it's broken, saying, it doesn't work, I can't do it, I'm not good at computers, I can't do it, it doesn't really help the person trying to help you. So communicating your problem in as detailed a way as possible is really beneficial to making the whole interaction go smoothly and getting whatever's broken fixed, really and truly. And if you remember, Mention the last time you completed the task successfully or how long you've been experiencing this problem. I am very guilty of, running into a problem on my computer, figuring out how to work around it, and then never fixing the problem I ran into until, it reappears its ugly head in a different way. Um, don't be embarrassed about it. If your computer's been crashing for 6 months or running super duper slow, just let them know. That gives them a full scope of the problem, right? And that's what we want to do. You'll also want to explain any steps you already tried to take. So they may very well ask you to try it again, especially if you're over the phone with them. But sometimes it'll just work all of a sudden when you do it with them on the phone. I can't tell you the number of times someone has come to me at the library with a problem and been like, oh my gosh, this won't work. Please come here. Let me show you what I'm trying to do. And I follow them back to their computer and they're showing me what they're trying to do, and then it works. And then they're like, oh, I just needed you standing here. Sorry, bye. It's really just, they probably took a little bit more time. Maybe it didn't work last time and it just decided to work when I was there. It's always worth trying it another time. Don't be angry with them. They're just, running through their possible list in their head, and it might work. So I have a couple of examples on the next few slides of computer problems. And if you wanted to, talk about if you've faced these computer problems in chat or say what you might say, if you can think of additional ways to follow the steps and describe the problem, please go ahead and put it in the chat. This is not a script by any means. Of course, there are nearly infinite ways to communicate the same information depending on who you are, the type of language you use, who you're talking to. So we'll get into the examples. So if I was in a situation where my monitor wouldn't turn on, I would find someone who could help. Let's see, if I was at work, I would definitely contact library IT. They are the ones that fix all our tech problems. They're awesome. If I was at home, I would probably ask my husband, honestly. He works in IT. He's my personal IT guy, so I would ask him. He's a friend and he's a family member, so yeah. So I would say to him, my computer monitor isn't turning on. It worked just fine this past Friday. I already made sure the monitor cable was plugged in tight and that the power supply was connected. Pretty simple. Pretty simple. It's not, extraordinary. It's not super complicated. You just want to give the information and, follow the instruction they give if you can. So in our second example, say I was trying to upload my photos from my vacation, but they wouldn't import. Again, I'm going to try and find someone who can help. So if I was using an application like Photoshop, I would probably contact Adobe's customer service, because if I've purchased an application specifically for editing photos, I want to be able to upload my photos into them, of course. So I'm going to contact them and their customer service department. I'm going to explain what should be happening that isn't. My photo editing software keeps freezing and I can't import new photos from my camera. I'm going to tell them how long I've been experiencing this problem. And it's okay if you don't remember. It's okay if you don't have the answers to some of these steps. It's just a good place to start if you can. I haven't imported new photos for a while, but I edited and printed some from here last month. And mention what you've already tried to do. I already tried to force quit and relaunch the application several times. So in our third and final example, last slide of the day, If the internet is not working, you're going to want to find someone who can help. And this, unfortunately, just happened to me last week. It was quite frustrating. Find someone who can help. First of all, I, did my little troubleshooting steps. My husband did his troubleshooting steps. We reset the router. We, tried the Wi-Fi on all the devices we could possibly try, the smart TV, the smart speakers, all the good stuff. So eventually we had to get in contact with Spectrum, and we told them, our internet's not working, our computers won't connect, none of our devices will connect. And in this example, I give them the error message, but we didn't have one. And you want to let them know how long you've been experiencing the problem. Again, I was just using the internet before lunch, right? For us in our situation, it was literally like 5 minutes we had internet, and then the next 5 minutes we didn't have internet. So it was quite sudden. There was no slowdown or anything like that. And then mention what you've already tried to do. So we tried to reset the routers, we tried it on all the devices, we tried everything we could think of, and still nada. So I include all these examples to kind of just show that, you can use your knowledge to try and solve your problem before you ask for help. But then once you ask for help, you want to lay it all out on the table for them so that they can help you as best as they know how. So thank you all for coming today. That's all I have for you. Are there any additional questions, Beth, or are we good?
I don't see any right now, so we might be good unless anybody wants to sneak one in there before we adjourn.
Totally. We can hang out for a couple of more minutes. My contact information is listed on this slide. Feel free to email me if you have any, questions that come to you at any point in time. And then for other awesome library programs, you should absolutely go to mpl.org and mpl.org/stay connected specifically to learn about all the awesome offerings we've had. Virtually, in person, all that good stuff. And you can also check out our YouTube channel for recordings of a lot of the cool programs we've done. We're building up quite a library. It's pretty impressive.
Oops, that's not the link to YouTube. I'll get it.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry.
Yeah, we'll send it to you.
We'll send it to you. When I send out the handout and the recording, the recording is on our YouTube channel. So I'll include a link to our greater YouTube channel as well. There's a lot of cool stuff on there.
Mm-hmm.
And next time we'll be going over a demonstration in LinkedIn, the #1 professional networking website. So I hope some of you will join us for that as well.
Mm-hmm. Lydia inspired me to start my LinkedIn back up, so I still need to do a lot of fixing of it, but it's working again.
That's awesome. I'm going to go endorse you.
My picture is very old, but I was laughing.
I think you're in a Harley polo, yeah?
I am. Yeah, that was my last job before this one. I had
Sweet.
a professional headshot, my one and only.
Nice. Very nice.
Yep.
Again, you all can email me if you have any questions. Thank you so much for joining us today. Have a wonderful evening and stay warm.
Yes, please do.